And then there's sometimes though we get calls. We've had one where we've been working a homicide or some major scene, and there just happens to be water behind the house, whether it's a canal, a retention pond, and there we've gotten called and they said, "Hey, we don't know what's in here. We don't even know if there is something in here."
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. When we think of forensic diving, most of us might draw up memories of a movie scene or recall a television show we once watched. For Dr. Sarah Mormino, it would become a reality. She would become the forensic diver. In this episode, I get a chance to hear about the path into becoming a forensic diver, techniques and tasks used, challenges encountered while collecting evidence, the power and influence of great teachers, and much more. Please enjoy. Sarah, how are you doing? It's this evening for you, correct?
Yes. Yep. 9 p.m. But I
Okay,
work
well,
night shift, so I'm used to it. This is early for me.
okay. Is it a day off for you right now? Or a night
Yes.
off, I should say? Okay,
Yes.
okay. And you are located in Florida.
Correct.
Okay. Are you originally from Florida, or did you move there?
I moved here for school back in 2000. So I've been here ever since, but I'm originally from Connecticut, which is New England area, so more north within the United States. Very small
Okay.
state. Nothing too
Okay.
crazy there.
Yeah. No, so I'm actually kind of a New England native myself. I did most of my growing up in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're very familiar then.
Yeah. We went down to Hartford a couple times for concerts, New Haven. I think there's probably something else in there that I can't remember. It's been many years, so I haven't been back there since, like, I think the last time was like 2008, 2009 or something like that, maybe even before that.
There's not much there. Unless you have family there, there's really no landmark where, oh, I need to go to Connecticut. Or unless you're going to New York or Massachusetts, there's really not. Or if you love skiing, which I am not a
Yeah,
big skier, I don't do snow. That's why I moved to the south. So,
that's understandable. That is very understandable. It's funny because I remember growing up, like everyone during the winter, not everybody, but a lot of people would make their way down to Florida just to kind of escape the New England winters because they can get quite brutal up there. And I've actually only been to Florida a few times, never been diving in Florida. So that's something I need to, at some point, check off the bucket list. But no, I just want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your evening to join us and tell us a little bit about your story. I'm very excited to hear a little bit more about what you have going on and the forensic diver. It's a cool topic, and I'm very excited to speak about it, or hear about it, I should say.
yeah, no, I appreciate you having me.
Okay, so my first question I usually like to ask is, tell me how and why you became a scuba diver. Tell me about that first breath underwater. Was it absolutely amazing? Was it absolutely horrible? Was it, this is okay, I think I could do it?
So, when I originally became scuba certified, it was in high school. And it was because I was going to go off to college the next year and I had a dream of being a marine biologist. I wanted to be that person who was taking boats offshore of South Africa. I wanted to be in the water with the sharks, studying everything about them, swimming with them. That was my dream job. Still is. So I got certified in high school. It's like kind of like a graduation gift. And hey, if you want to be a marine biologist, you're going to have to know how to scuba dive, right? So
This is in Connecticut.
yes, this is in Connecticut. So my first official dive, not in the pool, getting trained and certified. Honestly, when I think about it, it was just very cold. It was terrible. I loved the actual being underwater and doing the actual diving, but I think it was the first dive we did was just in a lake, just to kind of practice low visibility. So there wasn't, which now I'm super grateful for because most of the diving I do, I have zero visibility. The second dive we did was in the ocean. So it was, I think it was March. It was right at the end of March. So the water was just above freezing. And I had, I think, a 9 mil on, the gloves, the headgear, all of it. And I went through my air like that because I was just breathing so heavy. And then he's like, all right, we have to go back in one more time. I have to check you off that we can do navigation underwater. And I was like, don't make me go back in there. I will do navigation for you on shore. Give me the compass. Don't make me go back in the water. So, safe to say, it was a smart decision, at least, for me to move to Florida to continue my diving career because I don't think I could do it if I went up north. Of course, then I didn't even know about dry suits and the other options that now you should be using in those waters. But it worked out well. And then I quickly learned in college that as much as I love diving and as much as I love the oceans and studying the animals and the ecosystems, the hard sciences, like those chemistry, the math, not my thing. Not my thing at all. So I had to kind of pivot a little bit.
So diving in the cold water, it didn't deter you. You still wanted to pursue the marine biology or just that side of it. But at what point did you pivot and shift? Kind of, or did you get to
Sorry,
figure out?
my dogs. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What point did I pivot?
Yeah. Well, actually, real quick, what kind of dog? What kind of dog do you have?
I have two, and they've been quiet all day, but I swear they know every time I get on the computer, the phone, I'm doing a webinar or something. It's I've closed all my windows, yet they still find something to bark about. But they're two rescues, so they're both a mixture of things. One's a hound mix, another one's an American bully mix.
Okay. Okay. Boys, girls.
One girl, one boy.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. We have a cat. I had dogs years ago, but usually we outlive our puppies. So, but yeah, it's good. No, that's awesome that you have. They like to be heard. And
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with that. So,
Like to be included.
yeah, they're like, "What are you doing? I'm over
Yeah.
here."
Yep, they
Um,
need all the attention on them.
but the pivot. So, well, actually, when you did your open water, were you planning to continue the education? Were you planning to go like, okay, a lot of people, kind of the way the industry set up, it's like, okay, let's go into advanced, let's go into rescue. Was that in the works before or kind of as you were moving down to Florida?
Yeah, so when I originally got certified, that was just it, and then I came down to college a few months later and I started that program. And honestly, I took about probably a 3-year break from scuba diving. And that was just because I did move to Florida, and you'd think, oh, you're in Florida, like rush to scuba dive. But I didn't know anyone. So I had originally gotten scuba certified with my dad. So my dad was really the only partner I had ever been familiar with. And then I started all my classes, realized that this was not the route that I was going to be, had to go through the what am I going to do with my life phase. So it ultimately, I mean, my pivot was just, and until I didn't even start to advance my diving career until about 2000, maybe 18, is when really I started to pick it up again and then keep it going.
Well, I guess there's like so many directions, but I kind of want to jump in. Like, how did you get into the field that you're in? But before that, when you picked it back up and you started diving again, was that because you were going into the field that you are now in, or was it just kind of like, oh, okay, I like found some friends, want to go scuba diving? Can you tell me a little bit about getting back into it after a little hiatus?
Yeah, it was all so unexpected, and looking back on it, it really is crazy. I truly believe it's one of those things that it just happened for a reason. But yeah, so in school I went through the what am I going to do with my life. I had my goal set on being a marine biologist. I still do love the ocean. I like want to do those things, but that clearly is not, that's just, I don't think what my forever job is going to be, or at least what I'm going to get through. So I was just basically taking my general ed classes, all those random classes you have to take to get those credits done. And I took an anthropology class. And I only took it because someone in my dorm was like, this class is super easy and it fulfills this random credit you need, and just take it. So, okay, great. Took it. That class changed my life. I had no idea what anthropology was. I had no idea that was a thing. And for people that don't know, it's really just the study of people, the study of cultures, the studies of how we got to where we are today. And there's multiple different kind of avenues. There's then the study of languages, the biological makeup of, how we came from monkeys to humans. And then I learned about forensic anthropology. And growing up, I loved forensics, but I truly thought it was a TV job. I was
CSI.
like, and then I started to learn about it, and I'm like, oh, real people do this. I could do this. And I found that, and ball went rolling from there. And I ended up getting my degree. I interned my last year with my local sheriff's office, and then was able to jump into a career there right after, actually right before I graduated. At this time too, scuba diving was just something. I still loved the water. Anytime I could get out, I would, but I just, something was on the back burner. And I started, and within the first month of starting in forensics, we had a what originally was called a drowning in progress. And so on my first month in, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, put me in, coach. I want to go. I saw, and this is the first time I learned that public safety divers, police divers, were a thing. Again, I had no idea. Fresh out of school, learning. And so I'm watching them do what they do to recover the body, and I'm noticing very limited, actual forensic techniques utilized. The investigation we do on shore was not being brought into the water. And I started asking questions. So I'm like, well, I'm a diver. I've never done public safety diving, but I have that forensic background. Our forensic investigators on these teams? Is there that collaboration? How does normal diving, how does that translate into public safety diving? From there, because of that case, the rest was history. I actually had to petition to join the team, because in Florida, and kind of, it's really becoming more common around the world, that forensic investigators were considered civilians. So we don't carry firearms. We don't go through the police academy. We're still employed by the law enforcement agency. We just don't have the same arresting powers and that authority that officers have. And it was required that you had to be what they call sworn, so an officer, to be part of the team. I was like, well, that's stupid. So I'm like, that makes no sense. I get it to a point, like, what's the purpose of having someone from HR on the dive team? But forensically, whenever they're diving, it's because of they're recovering evidence involved in a crime. We're recovering a vehicle that went into the water, a body. There's some kind of forensic aspect to it. So they allowed me to try out, and then that was really when I picked up diving again for a truly like regular part of my life. After being on the team for a few months, kind of learning it, that's when I was like, all right, let me get my advanced. I'm going to get my rescue. I took scientific diving courses just to kind of learn how to incorporate just, really how we should, because public safety divers do not follow the same kind of scuba guidelines that we really should. So I kind of had to remind myself, okay, well, what's the appropriate way to dive to also protect this environment that I still do care so much about, and learn just kind of how to blend the two sides. So yeah, it was probably 2018, 19 that scuba really became like the big portion of my life again.
Oh, that's awesome. I have so many questions, which is good, right? We're on a
Yeah.
podcast. But actually, bringing it back to the anthropology, when you took that class, I love that, how you were just like, I'm going to take this course just to get it out of the way. It gets me an easy credit, ends up changing your life. I always like to ask, was it the actual topic? Was it the instructor or the teacher? Was it both? Because I know I could have the most favorite subject in the world. I get a bad teacher, it kind of just, I don't want to say it ruins it, but
It
it
does.
can. And
Yeah.
there could be subjects that I'm not even that much interested in, but I have a great teacher and I'm like, I want to know everything. So can you kind of tell me, and then what were the aspects that drew you into that world?
Yeah. You're absolutely correct, and I give a lot of props to that professor, Dr. Mahoney, from the University of South Florida. I'll give him a shout out. I still remember. He probably has no idea who I am, but he truly was. I believe it was the mixture between him and the content. He had the personality, the passion, and really just kind of those communication skills to really get a concept that, yeah, not many people might find interesting. Really kind of started to make you think. From there, when I joined the forensic track of within anthropology, I again was blessed with a professor. I call her Dr. B. She no longer goes by that last name, but we still are in contact to this day. She is my forever mentor. It also was because of her. She was the one I took all of my forensic anthropology classes to. She taught me. I took osteology classes, so to learn all of the different bones, whether it was a whole bone or if it was broken into a piece that was just smaller than the tip of your finger, how to identify those. She allowed me to be kind of like an unofficial teaching assistant to her to continue to learn and grow. And so it really was I give a huge shout out to those two professors. It was Dr. Mahoney that got me into it, and Dr. B, who kept me in it and continues to help me kind of navigate my way through to even to this day. There's still times I've sent her pictures out in the field and I'm like, "Hey, we came across this bone, but look at the shape of it." I'm like, "What is that? What that makes no sense." And she'll explain it all to me. So she's great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's absolutely amazing. I really do. Professors, teachers, instructors, I mean, they really do have the power to change the world. I mean, literally, like,
Yeah.
changing your life. And it's kind of a bummer sometimes that they're not much more respected. Well, I mean, they are respected. That's the wrong way to put it. But
They're not
um,
appreciated sometimes.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a bummer because the work that they do, I mean, literally you're changing the future with each mind that you meet and touch, and it's just insane. They should be a lot more appreciated because, like I was just saying, there's subjects where I was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't really be interested in this," but you meet the right person, you're like, "Yeah, I need to know more." Their passion just radiates across the room. So, you made I don't want to say comment, but you said something because I do know. So I want to kind of ask your take on things. The public safety diver and then, like, your open water scuba diver are very different. And because I always said the same thing about commercial divers. It's a
Yeah.
different game. It's a different ballpark. We're both breathing underwater, but that's pretty much about it as far
Yep.
as
Yeah.
me
That sounds about right.
But can you tell me a little bit about what you were seeing and what you thought needed to be changed in their approach to these sites that they were going to?
Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't want to say it's a complicated question, but it really kind of depends on the scenario. So public safety divers are very well trained in how to navigate in most of the waters that we are diving in. We have zero visibility. Most of the time, I just dive with my eyes closed because if I keep them open, I'm just staring out into darkness, and then my eyes start playing tricks on me, and then I start seeing things that aren't there. So I just dive with my eyes closed. It just makes it easier. But being able to navigate those environments, they're biohazard environments. We have entanglement hazards. They're not the bodies of water anyone voluntarily wants to go into. Navigating those waters, you have to have certain search patterns. You need to know how to properly recover evidence when it's found. And public safety divers are great at that. What I originally noticed though is, again, they're still dealing with crimes. The crimes just have an aquatic aspect to it. And there was just no regards to anything forensics. Even our own officers are kind of under this impression that the second something hits water, all forensic value is gone. And that's far from the case. Like, we can still get fingerprints, we can still get DNA, we can get trace evidence if as long as things are recovered and documented correctly. And that's what was missing from a forensic standpoint. But then, just as the scientific diver, and that, the part of my heart that still loves marine biology and studying that part of things, public safety divers are referred to, we get called bottom feeders. And you're literally told to purposefully overweight yourself and then just sink to the bottom, because most of the time the evidence we're looking for is going to be on the bottom. But okay, so we're just overweighting ourselves. We're being told to sink to the bottom and then basically drag ourselves along the bottom of this body of water to try to find this piece of evidence. And yes, when you are told you're looking for a cell phone, something this big in a body of water, do you have to be super detailed and have contact with the bottom? Yes. But then we have those days where we're just doing a fun dive during practice, and they're doing the same thing. So we're like at a coral reef, and they're just waiting themselves. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, okay, you have to know when to turn off the public safety diver and just become a regular diver again. Like, it's called buoyancy control. Let's practice it. And back to diving 101. And even that, I sometimes have to teach when I do teach about forensic diving, because we have such limited visibility. But most of the time we have limited visibility because they're saying weight yourselves to go to the bottom, and then we're just creating this silt layer around us where we did have a little bit of visibility, but now we have absolutely none. So when I'm like, okay, we still need to document scenes underwater, or at least try, but be able to do that, you have to send someone in the water with a camera that can have buoyancy control, because the second they hit the bottom, you're not going to be able to document anything anymore.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it really
yeah.
is you have to find that balance between how, the public safety aspect, and then also just your normal diving skills that you learn in your open water classes.
Oh, that's funny. So I just watched this documentary on Nat Geo documentary on diving the tombs of Egypt or something like that. It just came out on YouTube. I don't know if you saw that,
Yeah.
but it was funny because they were going in there was a flooded tomb, and obviously it was with tombs being raided throughout the centuries or whatnot, it was a great place that held a lot of stuff because people couldn't get in there, right? So they had to actually go in with diving equipment, and they had surface supplied air, and they were going in there, same thing, and they're like, oh, we need to go and document everything, and we need to take pictures, but as soon as we get in there, it silts up and we can't see anything. And in my head, the diver in me is like, dude, why aren't you above? Like, you could go in there and not move anything,
Yeah,
like, just
right.
use your
Just don't touch
buoyancy.
anything and you won't have a problem.
And then, so they basically, I mean, they had a lot of money behind it, obviously, so they completed these computer generated images of what it should look like. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. But you could go get real footage because the water was somewhat clear when they would go in. And then within a minute, you'd just see like the silt dust come up.
Right. Right.
So here's a question for you on the public safety diving side. So I know most agencies, like, most of the agencies kind of have their branches of public safety diving training, right? Is there, when you go into public safety diving, is it like you have to have the open water certification first, or are there other agencies that you go, kind of like commercial diving? I don't believe you have to have an open water certification. I might be wrong on that. They go into the training. It's a completely different aspect. So are there are there top agencies, or is it kind of like go get your PADI public safety diver type training? Does
Yeah.
that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really depends. For a while, it was most common that you needed at least your open water certification. And then further training would be provided by the agency. But just recently, my agency, we've actually had the problem where not a lot of people want to do public safety diving, again, because we are not diving in these ideal water conditions. So trying to find someone who's already employed and already certified, who's interested was becoming very difficult, and we did need divers. So we actually just recently opened it up and brought two people on our team who were interested in joining but had no certifications. But the agency was able to pay for their open water certification to get them initially certified and then continue through there. Every kind of agency is different. I think it's pretty standard across the board. Most of them prefer for you at least have your open water. And just because scuba diving is one of those things, like you said, you might think it's great until you take your first breath underwater and you're like, this is the worst experience of my life. I don't want to do anything else with this. So to put kind of money into someone for them to be like, just kidding, I want nothing to do with this. I think that's a risk that some agencies don't want to take, and rightfully so, and understandable. And from there, some agencies require it. Within your first year, you have to then go take a public safety diving course. There's multiple offered throughout the country. All of them kind of have their own twists on them. Like, I think Patty has their own. And then there's other agencies that host, like one in Florida, Miami-Dade. They have a huge dive team, and their dive team is actually a full-time. Like for us, we are just a specialty team. So it's just as needed. My main role is to be forensics on land, but if they call me, then I will respond as a diver. Miami, because of the fact they have so much water, they have so much imports, doing cruise ships, all that, they have a full-time dive team. And so they also host their own public safety diving course, which is one that we send a lot of our members to. And there's a couple other agencies that host their own. And then there's some, side dive shops that host theirs, and some training companies. But those when they teach public safety diving, it's not how to dive. It's learning the search patterns. It's learning how to lift cars out of the water in a safe manner so you're not hurting yourself, injuring someone. And then sometimes they do fun stuff, like if you had to be airlifted to this body of water, so like jumping out of a helicopter in your dive gear. And so really just kind of teaching all of those unique aspects of public safety diving. And normally they're about a 2-week course.
It's funny, earlier you mentioned about when you're diving, you're basically you have your eyes closed, right? Because it's a environment like that. And no, I can very much relate. So I've done a little bit of work underwater. I think they have a company. I mean, they're all over the place, but I used to work for a company that did dock work on Lake Travis in Austin, Texas. So we would do a lot of work underneath. Sometimes it would be right underneath the dock, or you'd have to go find an anchor or just something. And then I worked for another company called Seatow, who basically, like, we would pull boats out of the water. We were kind of like the AAA of the lake, right?
Yep. Very familiar with Seatow, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So it was funny because, the bottom of Lake Travis, most of the bottom of Lake Travis, there's been times where I've been able to put like my whole arm through just muddy silt. Like you step in it, it's bad. So it silts up, visibility goes down really quick. I used to carry a light, and then same thing, like you're shining the light, you can't see anything. You're like, I might as well just have my eyes closed, because at least I know, like, my eyes are closed. I'm not seeing anything because my eyes are closed. I don't even want the light because it's just ruining my I'm not ruining the
It makes it worse. It just looks like it's snowing underwater. Because the debris, the light can't penetrate that debris, so the light just gets pushed right back into your face.
And so we would always joke around and say it's basically diving by braille. Like you're just diving by feel, diving by touch. And so they had a lot of if you have a home on Lake Travis, a lot of people will have water pumps that go out to the lake, and they sit at not the bottom, but however deep, and they basically used for like irrigating people's lawns, things like that. So you would have, when the pumps would break down, that was another job that I would have sometimes, is where I'd have to go down, pull the pump up, tie it to a lift bag. Those PADI skills got put to the test. But we had basically like a PVC pipe that would bring us down to the hose. Sometimes it would be buried, so I could just follow this hose down to where the pump is, right? So my question for you is, you were talking about you need to go find a cell phone. You drop down on the bottom. There's no visibility. How are you finding the cell phone? Is it basically oh, the cell phone's over in that area somewhere, we don't know, or how are you even finding out that there's a cell phone that needs to be found, kind of, you know? So can you kind of take me through the steps of you just arrive, or even you get the call, hey,
Hmm.
we need to show up here? What kind of take me through those steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends on the case. So, in an ideal world, yes, we want to have as much information as we can. And it also depends on how big the body of water is. And then you said sometimes, like, how do you even know a cell phone is what you're looking for? Sometimes we don't. That's just, what we find. We've been called, and it's most of the time it is that either a witness or the actual suspect reports that either someone saw someone throwing what looked to be maybe a gun or something in the water, or the suspect, after being interrogated, is like, yep, when I left the scene, I drove over a bridge, and as I was driving over the bridge, I tossed it out of my window into the river that I was going over. So, in an ideal world, we do want to try to get, okay, well, where was the item thrown from? Like, if you're just like, well, I just passed this river, there might be 6 different bridges in the area that goes over the same river. All right, well, what bridge? First of all, we need to figure out. And then, what side of the bridge did you throw it off of? Did they throw it from the driver's window, the passenger window? Were they traveling north, south, east, west? We ideally want to get all of that to try to narrow down that search area as much as possible, because if you have a river and you're looking for a cell phone and you have no information, we'll be searching that river for years, depending on how big it is. And then there's sometimes though we get calls. We've had one where we've been working a homicide or some major scene, and there just happens to be water behind the house, whether it's a canal, a retention pond, and we've gotten called and they said, hey, we don't know what's in here. We don't even know if there is something in here. But from the scene, we're still missing. We had a case where we're still missing the victim's cell phone, and we're still missing, other personal items. So maybe they're in the water. We don't know if they are, but can you check? So depending on those scenarios, yeah, sometimes it's a lot easier to narrow down the search area, and sometimes it's harder. But once we can establish how big the body of water is, how much we can narrow down the possible location of the item, and then the possible size of the item, that's when we have to then come in and say, okay, what search pattern do we want to use, and how many search groups can we send in at one time? So we are always tethered by a rope, and that's how we actually conduct our search patterns. Because you're right, when you're going underwater, especially when you can't see, even if you can see, if you're not using a compass, you don't know if you're going left, right, straight, backwards, forwards, going in circles, doing flips. All of a sudden, everything seems like you're going in a straight line. So we're constantly attached by a rope, and we have someone on shore that holds the other end of that rope. And so how we conduct the search pattern is we can only go where that rope allows us to go. So I always usually need a whiteboard to try to explain it, but one of the most common patterns that we use is a sweep search. And that really involves, so we have the line tender on shore holding onto the rope, and then we have the diver in the water who's attached to the rope. You'll start out where maybe there's only probably maybe an arm's length, 5-10 feet of rope given, maybe a little more. And they'll start out on one side of the shore, they'll pull the rope tight, and then completely kind of swim in an arc. They'll hold the rope tight because they're only searching where that rope brings them. When they get to the other side of shore, to that area, they'll be given 1 more foot of rope, 2 more foot of rope. Now they're from searching this, they're now coming out and searching back just a couple feet. So it's as close to a line search on land as we can do in water. So, and there's tons of other ones, like a jack stay is another one of the most common search patterns that public safety divers use, which involve just having 2 anchors attached by a rope and then just following that rope across, searching, then just moving the anchor up a little bit, following the rope back, searching, then moving the second anchor, following the rope, searching, and then keep going. We do have underwater communication devices. They work about 50% of the time. So
Are you in
sometimes
full
we
face
can
masks?
communicate. Huh?
Are you in full face masks?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yep. Yeah, so sometimes we can communicate underwater if we have those full face masks, which make it a little easier to be like, hey, I'm tangled, I need a little more rope, or the person on shore saying, hey, you're about to hit the other end of shore, so I'm going to give you more rope, turn around, start your search pattern. But most of the time, we communicate through that actual tether itself, so through that rope, through line pulls. So, for example, like if I pull the rope 3 times, that's telling the person on shore, I found the item, I'm going to stay in this location, deploy a flotation device, and then I will surface. If they pull the line and I feel the line being pulled 3 times, that's telling me, hey, whenever you get a chance, surface safely because maybe we have more information, maybe another search team found it, we need to change, something more thorough needs to be communicated on land. So that's most of the time how we communicate and how we search to try to keep that. But it's really that divers tend to get most of the credit for finding the item because they're the ones in the water finding it. But it's that person on shore who controls the rope and controls. That's the person that controls where the diver goes, and that the search pattern is being conducted in a methodical way. So if that line tender is not paying attention and gives out too much rope or doesn't do something, then you're going to have gaps in your search pattern, and that could result in you not finding the item. So it's really a team effort.
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's funny because when I worked at the dock company, we did that a few times, and even some other scenarios where we were doing rope patterns, search patterns, and some of the problems that we would always run to. And we're not trained individuals, right? We're just like a bunch of ragtag dock workers out who scuba dive. So the boss is like, yeah, we could do scuba diving work. Great company. Absolutely loved working there. But like we would go, and it's like you have the boat tender or the guy that's supposed to have the rope, and then it's like, was that a pull? I don't know. Was that a pull? And then you're just sitting there like, I don't know. And then, or you need like a little bit more line or just something. So you kind of tug it, and then they're like, oh, they're trying to communicate. And it's like, no. I was just trying to tell you something, or I was just trying to get a little bit more line. And then the other thing that we would run into is just kind of how sometimes the terrain is. You like basically say the diver's down at the bottom, you have the person with the rope up top. It might be like a lot of boulders in the way. So basically when you like you're not truly doing a search pattern because the rope's coming down, wraps around a boulder.
Yep.
The diver thinks he's got all the rope that he has, and then you kind of just end up searching the same area because if that makes sense. So what do you do when you run into a situation like that?
Yeah, that happens more often than we would like for it to happen. And it's not even, you would think most of the time, it'd be boulders, those natural things that happen in water, but you would also be amazed at what people throw in water. It really is used as like the nature's trash can, and it drives me insane. Like we've come across couches, washing machines, golf carts, bicycles, like why shopping why are these things in the water? But yeah, they all pose risk to us, just safety wise, and the rope becoming snagged. And there have been times where we're like, okay, we're going to go in this body of water, we're going to do a sweep search, this is what we're going to do. And then after 2, 3 passes, we come up and we're like, this isn't working. And we just had this a few months ago where it was the couch example. There was a couch right horizontally across where we were trying to search. And we're like, we can't get past this couch. So it does a lot of times require like you got to be able to change your plan, come up with a new game plan. And sometimes too, we always do at least a land survey of the area before we send any divers in. But sometimes it requires us to just send a couple divers in, not doing any search patterns, but telling us, okay, what is this water environment like? How deep is it? What is the terrain on the bottom? That way we can, before we send any divers in to start a search, be able to come up with a plan that we know will work. So sometimes, yeah, we'll start off with a sweep search and then we're like, this isn't working. So we're going to have to kind of send a diver in, just a free diver, not attached to anything, to search around the couch. And then we're going to have to implement a jack stay search right after the couch to then have
Oh.
divers search further and hope that we don't come up with another hazard past there. We deal with that a lot. Even just like docks, for example, we have to search around so many docks, and docks have so many entanglement hazards. And a lot of the times it does require us to, have someone do an actual search pattern working around the dock, but then just sending a regular diver in, not attached to anything, to try to do as best as they can the most methodical search around that dock to check under it, around it, whatever we need. Definitely required. Sometimes it's easier than others.
Another thing about Lake Travis is it's a flooded area, right? So it was dammed up and flooded. In a lot of areas, you can actually there's like forests, there's trees. So once you get into that area, there's no rope search pattern
Yeah.
that you could do anything with. So it's basically it has to be kind of a free diver in a sense to
Hmm.
where they can just go and do the search patterns. And then the so when you're searching for the phone, like are you standing most of the time? Or are you kind of like if there's no visibility, are you kind of on your hands and knees just doing the feeling on the ground, or is it like how are you going about that?
Yeah. So, there's some bodies of water where they're like, yep, we need the dive team, and the body of water is only 2 feet deep. So that makes it very hard to scuba dive. So there have been times where we have just been on our hands and knees in our wetsuits or dry suits, depending on what the environment is, conducting a search. Most of the time, though, we are in full scuba gear and we really just kind of have to, like I described before, lay on the bottom. And then from there, we really are conducting the search by our hands and then slowly pulling ourselves forward in the search and then conducting it that way. And really, that's the best way just to make sure you're not missing an area because of the fact you're just staying on the ground. There have been times as well, too, though, where we have had to kind of do like half of it walking. So sometimes we'll have someone do walk the kind of the outer area of the body of water. Or we've had those situations, yes, where we've had mangroves where, yeah, you're not getting a rope in there. You're not even getting a scuba tank in there. You've got branches, leaves, sticks everywhere. There's nothing you can do. And the goal is to come out of every search saying that we are absolutely certain we found everything that there is to find in this body of water. And if we didn't find anything that we can confidently say, well, it's not in there. But there have been times where the environment is very difficult to where we do the best we can, but we've had to come back and tell detectives, like, we're not saying it's not in there. We're just saying, based on what we could do given the circumstances, right now we cannot find it, or we're saying it's not there. And then usually that requires some, okay, let's break, come back and game plan on what we can do, especially given if the probability of the item it being there is high, then okay, let's take a break from this, come back and determine what we do next. There was one body of water where yeah, it was really just a off flow of water from flooded areas, but it mainly was within, like you're just basically describing, a heavily wooded area. There was a lot of bushes and tight, really kind of just grasslands under the water, making it, and but the water wasn't really that deep. But because it wasn't that deep, that actually made it harder because we couldn't actually dive it. So trying to figure out that happy medium. So we didn't find it the first time, but the probability of the weapon being there was high. So we came back and we're like, there's really not a lot of water in there. Let's just pump it. Like, so we
Ah,
ended up just pumping that. Now you can't do that if you have a full blown lake or,
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
river, but sometimes for those smaller water environments, those are the ones that cause the most challenges. And so sometimes it's like, hey, we don't even need the dive team. Let's just pump all of the water out of that and then we can do a proper search. So, gotta be creative sometimes.
Yeah. Thinking outside of the water.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like more than a few years ago now, Lake Travis flooded where it was, I can't remember the exact numbers, but basically the lake was really low and then it flooded. I think there was one day where the water rose over 20 feet in just one day. And it's a
Wow.
massive lake, right? So, So over the course of, I think, like a week, I can't remember exactly how much the water rose, but it was kind of cool in a sense because we're diving in these areas where yesterday it was basically on land, and now
Yeah.
so there. I remember literally we were diving through almost like like live forests and trees and bushes, and there were there were some houses unfortunately that got flooded, and we didn't go diving in any of it, but in my mind I was thinking like, man, the that's got, I don't know if the house is on a septic system or what the sewers kind of situation is like, but that's got to be kind of pretty bad as far as contaminants. I actually got a really bad ear infection that time because Texas, a lot of cow farms, it all kind of comes running into the river, so it was really bad. So what types of gear are you like? So you say bodies of water, that could be vast, right? So you could be in some nice water, like you're saying, you could be in water that nobody wants to be in. It might be kind of, some bad stuff in there as far as contaminants. How are you protecting yourself from those biohazards? Is that right?
Yeah.
Biohazards? Is that the right
Yep.
word?
Yep. That is
Yeah.
absolutely the right word. That's another thing where every agency is different because of funding, and as you know, dive gear can be extremely expensive. My agency is a perfect example. Originally, we didn't all have dry suits. Luckily, we do now. So that's like a no brainer. Anytime we're going into contaminated water, we're gonna wear our dry suits. That way, we're protecting our bodies from the water and the elements in it. And I was a big advocate for that because of the fact I have my forensic role. Most of the time, whenever there was a body in the water, it was, oh, call Sarah. Like, Sarah will handle it. So there were a couple times that I was going into these bodies of water wearing just wetsuits. So I was just swimming around in this body of water that this person has been decomposing in for whether it's been two days or 2 weeks, But most places have dry suits, and that's really what we look for. So you want the dry suits and the full face masks to try to protect ourselves as much as possible. And then for those cases where you really do need to make sure that all areas are covered, then you can have hoods to kind of protect like your ears, keeping the water out of your ears. I actually half the time I forget to wear them, but I have like the earplugs for scuba diving where it's because I can't tell you the amount of times I've come out and I've taken a Q-tip to my ear and it's just muck and dirt and I'm like, oh, this is not good. Not good. There's actually one of my favorite pictures from one of the first when I joined the dive team I was diving and it was a big silt layer and this was before I had my full face mask or my dry suit. And it was a canal. It was attached to the Gulf. So the water itself wasn't contaminated necessarily, but it was a canal behind the house. So it did grow like that silt layer. And I pop up and they're like, oh my God, don't move. And to take a picture. But so you have my mask, and then everything around my mask is just black, just completely black from all of the silt that I had just been diving in. So yeah, we want to try to avoid that. It's not the healthiest, and that's honestly why a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to do that.
Like, I think I'll
But we
pass
do
on
try to
this one.
protect ourselves as much as we can.
What material is the dry suit? Because I know they have, like, obviously there's different materials, but they have some that are kind of, I don't want to say rubber, but more of a plastic material to kind of protect. Is that or what is the material of the dry suit?
Yeah, another thing that kind of depends on the agency. Most agencies do kind of have that like plastic rubber, like that thick, it's not neoprene, but yeah, like that thicker material. My agency, the ones that we use, is actually a mixture of one that's also can just be used for surface rescues and for like flood water. And that's just because we do also have a lot of hurricanes. So ours is more of a cloth. It still is waterproof, but it's not that like rubber material. I don't know exactly what it's made out of. But yeah, it definitely varies depending on the agency.
Okay. And so a question that I want to ask is, so like you're saying, you're going and you're finding a body in the water. There's a missing person, or if there's a body in the water. I don't want to say like mental preparation. That's probably not the correct term. But obviously that's something that I feel like most of the public couldn't do or would want to do. Obviously, that's got to be, especially and forgive me because I just think of like like a horror movie or something, right? Just low visibility movie. All of a sudden, there was a movie not too long. I think it was, I can't remember what it was called, like The Lake or something. And you basically, what type of, is there mental preparation, or is it kind of like, can you just kind of do you kind of see sense where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Like what? Yeah, okay. So if you could just answer me that, I don't really know how to word it because I want to be like, what are you thinking? It's not like that, but like, what type of mental prep? Obviously, this is something people can't. A lot of people can't do. So can you
Mhm.
kind of tell me about that whole approach to it?
Yeah, I really don't know what kind of mental prep, but I also have to preface that with I am just built differently because of the fact I do work forensics. So, I mean that's almost my daily life is working death investigations, and whenever we're on scene it's usually people's worst day. So that just having that background in forensics definitely helps. And what also helps is most of the time when we are recovering people from bodies of water, they're in their flotation stage. So it's we can see where they are, and we can't see all aspects of their body, but we can at least, it's like, okay, well, I see where the person is. There's going to be no surprise. But there have been times where we've done searches for people, and I can specifically remember there was one where it was a missing person case, and they were like, we don't know if this person is in a body of in this body of water, but we've exhausted all other places, so let's just check to see if they are. And it was one of it was pretty early in my public safety diving career, and so I just remember searching, and the whole time I was like, oh my god, what if a hand just popped in front of my face right now? And I was like freaking myself out underwater because I'm searching. And then this was the time where I was keeping my eyes closed, but then I would open them and I'd be like, what if I opened my eyes and there was just a face staring at me? Uh, so, but I quickly learned I can't think like that because, yeah, then you're just going to consistently psych yourself out, and you're
Oh
going to
yeah.
start to freak out underwater because all of a sudden then, and I've had times too, not bodies, but we're in Florida, so almost every body of water we dive in has an alligator in it. And it's just something that we know they're there, they know we're there. We leave them alone if we can. But there was one time where we did have some visibility. So I was trying to conduct the search, and it was for a car. So it was a large item. So I'm like, okay, this is a perfect body of water to where let's keep some buoyancy control and we can conduct a search actually visually because it's a car, it's a large item, without having to disturb anything. And we did know that there was a large gator in there because we saw it doing our land survey. And so the whole time I'm like, okay, well, let's just hope the gator, stays away. And all of a sudden, this fish just right in front of oh my god, if I could have jumped out of the water like a cartoon, I probably would have. I, so you do, whether it's a body or even an animal, you definitely do psych yourself out, but you have to kind of keep yourself distracted a little bit. You have to just kind of, a lot of times my mind is thinking about, oh, okay, like, what do I have to do later today? Thinking about my plans that weekend, whatever it is, just to kind of keep yourself, you're focused on the mission, but you're not focused on, is a hand about to jump in front of my face? So, yeah. And there's also times too, even when they're floating, one of the big aspects I train forensically is that you need to be doing a full survey of the body before they're being recovered so that you know truly what you're dealing with. So sometimes you have visibility and you're able to just kind of do a swim around and tell. Other times you don't, and you kind of have to do it by feel. And then that's very similar to like sticking your hand into a bowl and you can't see what's in the bowl, and how then you psych yourself out that way. Actually, after our last hurricane last year, I had a body recovery, and she was floating, but I was trying to do a survey and I could tell she had a lot of animal activity. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, are we missing any limbs? Just because we obviously, too, if she's delicate, trying to recover her out of this, we need to make sure we don't remove any body parts. And it was turtles. Turtles are so vicious. So vicious. they had removed all of the skin from her right hand or her right arm. And it was basically just bone and the tendons keeping it all together. But I'm trying to figure that out, and everything you touch, you're like, ooh, oh, okay, okay. All right, now I can touch it, but then you have to like, then you pull back and you're like, oh, what am I touching? Ooh, okay, and then but then you start to piece it together. So it's not always the most pleasant. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, no, no. Absolute kudos to you because yeah, somebody has to do it, and it's funny when you were talking about the hand jumping out at you. There was a video I can't remember how long ago, but a boat capsized. I think it was like in 100 feet of water or something. You probably are familiar with the video, and I can't remember how long. Maybe like 5 days it had been underwater, and the cook survived in this little
Oh
like
yeah,
yeah, and you could actually hear it in the video because obviously at that point the diver is like, this is a recovery, right?
right.
Like he's down there, he has it in his head, this is a recovery, and so they have the video, and then the hand just grabs him.
Yeah, no,
I
that
would,
would. Oh gosh, I couldn't
I
even
have,
imagine.
dude, I have no idea how he was able to keep his. I mean, you'd hear him scream a little bit in the video, but still, like that. Yeah, that would have been so terrifying because you're like, oh, it's a recovery, and then now there's an actual somebody grabbing you. I would have been. I don't even know how I would have been because I just yeah, I would have been absolutely terrifying.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, no way. And that's one thing I always have to remember as well. Luckily, we are on the coast, so we do have a lot of boat recoveries we'll sometimes help with, but the Coast Guard does most of those surveys first for us. But yeah, there was even, I think, maybe just a year ago, there was someone that lived like 11 days in the boat, in a capsized boat, in an air bubble. It was crazy. It was, I don't remember where it was. It was somewhere in the United States, I believe. So yeah, you have to always remember with boats. It's like you never know what could be, who could be in there, who's still kicking.
yeah, really, yeah. That's. I would be absolutely terrified. And so another, I always this is like the question that I hate, but I always do love asking. So obviously the Hollywood movies, scuba diving is always it's very very wrong sometimes. Like there's very few movies that actually get scuba diving right. So I couldn't even imagine your side of the industry with Hollywood. What are some of the things that stand out in your mind? Like why this is horrible, and maybe some things, or what are some things that they get right, or is it because obviously like CSI, you see this stuff, it's very Hollywood, very glamorized, especially CSI Miami. That was a great show.
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name, but he always had the punchlines after every put the glasses on, had his punchline or
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
David or not David Duchovny. Yeah, I can't even remember.
Yeah, I
David
don't know.
Caruso. Yeah, but like as far as like, can you even stand watching movies sometimes with this stuff going on, or is it just like absolutely like, or is it super entertaining? Like, can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's 50-50. Most fictional crime scene shows I can't watch. I could if I have, excuse me, if I had to, but I don't really choose to. The only one that I do watch on a regular basis is Law and Order SVU. Love that
Okay.
show. Love me some Olivia Benson. But that's also not too focused on the crime scene. They do some forensics in it, but it's mostly focused on the detective side of things. But yeah, we deal with that constantly. And it's not even just the diving side, but even trying to go to court and explain to the jury, they want, because they expect from these TV shows that we consistently always get these perfect fingerprints and that we get the DNA back an hour later and that then we can, that DNA brings us right to whoever it is, or that we find a shoe print on scene and that shoe has only been sold once in the state that we live in, and then they can track down where exactly they bought it from, and that store happens to have the receipt and the credit card information from who bought it, and then when you go and knock on their door, they're wearing the shoes that were found at the crime scene. Those are always my favorite. But you have to explain to a jury
It's
that's not how it
television.
works. But you still have to explain it in a way that shows that while that's not how it works, we do have a proven and a scientific method that did get us the results we want for the case. It's just not in the way that they were expecting. And sometimes, too, the defense attorney will really hone in on that. We call it the CSI effect. So if we did process a crime scene and say we didn't find any fingerprints, there's a lot of crime scenes where we don't find fingerprints. Was someone wearing gloves? Some people leave prints easier than others. If you sweat a lot, you're going to leave a good fingerprint. But if your hands are normally very dry, you might not leave any fingerprints. So the defense will play into the CSI effect and be like, well, you didn't
Oh.
get any prints. Like, you always get prints. Then that means that there was no crime or that my person wasn't there. And it's like, no, that's not how forensics works. And when I have seen kind of water related things in Hollywood, it comes down to, yeah, people dispose of bodies or evidence in water because, oh, now we're not going to get any forensic results. Like, they're not going to be able to identify them. Just
The
recently, I don't know if
DNA
you're
is
a
gone.
Dexter
Yeah.
person, the Dexter, it's not Resurrection because that's the new one coming out, but the one they just did of him as a child, like becoming who he is. One thing that drove me nuts is he got rid of all of his remains by feeding them to alligators. Alligators are predators. They're not scavengers. Most of the time alligators don't care about dead remains. They might like try them, but they're not going to devour them and leave nothing behind. I'm like, that's not how it works. All of your victims you just dumped in that body of water. I promise you, they would have been able to find them and identify them. So,
Ah, that's funny.
so sometimes it's like, yeah, this is not right. And we actually had a case, a pretty high profile homicide in our county a couple years ago, and we did some diving. And of course, the media was there, and I came out. We did end up recovering evidence from behind the house. And I was just laughing reading the news articles because they had me carrying the bucket of water out that contained the evidence, but we had a tarp over it so that they couldn't see what was in the bucket. And they were like, forensics is bringing water to the lab and they're going to test this water for human remains and all of this. And I'm like, yeah, okay. That's exactly what I'm
Oh,
going to do.
that's hilarious. No, and it is funny because, obviously, I know very little about the forensic world. A lot of the stuff that, like, I think I know, I was just like, oh, I've seen this in a movie once. So that's why I always like to ask this question because I'm like, that maybe they could do something like that, but obviously reality is very different. And on that note, I guess I should ask last few questions for you. What would you say is the toughest part about the work that you do?
That's hard because I think it kind of depends on how I look at it. For me personally, I think that the hardest part is that I have spent, I'm still relatively new in public safety diving. I'm not going to pretend that I'm someone that's been doing it for 20 years and that I am proficient in it because I am not. And I am not an expert in public safety diving. But I do consider myself an expert in forensics. And there's not a lot of blend between forensics and public safety diving, which is ultimately how the forensic diver was born, was how to merge these two together. And a lot of people love it. They're like, yes, love it. And a lot of people are, this is how we've done it. We don't need to change it. I've tried to help a lot of forensic people get involved in their dive teams, and a lot of still law enforcement agencies are, nope, you stay in your lane, we don't need you. And so I really am trying to be one of very few, I mean, I'm not the only one in the country nor in the world that's trying to incorporate forensics, but sometimes it is very like, you constantly hit this brick wall and you're trying to explain what you're doing, why you're doing, the purpose of it, and how it's going to help. And it's not always listened to, especially being a female in a male dominated world. And I'm also a civilian female. So I'm not even, someone that carries a gun, because for some reason that should give me more respect. That's not how it should work. But so that's really kind of mentally and personally one of the hardest parts for me. And when it actually comes to doing the job, I really love it. But I would say the hardest part is really, I don't, oh, that's hard when it comes to actually doing it. It really kind of depends on each case, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's really easy, and then you just love all aspects to it. Sometimes there's a new challenge, and there was one case where it was actually part of a dismemberment case, and they were missing all of the teeth still for the victim. And they were like, yeah, hey, we need you to search this body of water for teeth. Oh my God, finding teeth underwater, that was the worst search I've ever had to do in my life.
It's literally needle in a haystack.
Oh my gosh, every rock, you're sitting there, and I was, after like 10 minutes, I was like, I'm over this. I'm over it. And then those are the ones where it's just like, this is not what I signed up for.
And then two questions for you. So when people when it becomes kind of their career sometimes to get underwater, like if you work, professionally as a scuba instructor, or basically you're in a body of water a lot, sometimes it's hard for people to say, "Oh, I'm just going to go on a fun dive and just have a good fun dive." Are you still fun diving? Is that kind of like, do you have any trips planned? Is it something like, or when you're day off, you're like, I'm going nowhere near the water. I just want to relax at home, watch some bad forensic television. Like, do you still try to get out there and fun dive as much as possible, or?
I do try. I don't do it as much as I would like to, but I do definitely try, especially when I do plan vacations, and I try to get a fun dive in to where I can. I went to Australia like a year and a half ago, and I actually was able to work with their dive team out there,
Oh,
which was
cool.
fabulous. So that was fun, because not only did I get to do work diving, but I also got to do fun diving. But I also have terrible luck with fun dives. Like when I've gone on vacation and I'm like, all right, I'm going to book this dive. And then that day, thunderstorms all day. Hey,
Oh,
your dive's
yeah.
canceled. Went to the Keys last year, and I'm like, all right, we're going to do a dive. And then a category 4 hurricane came the next day. So, of course, they're like, yeah, we're not going to run the boats because we're going to get hit with a category 4 hurricane in a few hours. So, and then I had to rush home anyway for work. So, I just, I do have really bad luck with,
It'll
doing
happen.
like those dives somewhere else.
Yeah, it'll happen one of these days. And then my last question for you is, usually I like to end on an advice question. Is somebody, maybe out there listening to this episode, or even not listening to this, but has it in their mind that they want to get into the work that you are doing, forensic, either out of the water or in the water. What is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person?
Definitely, you need to just have that ability to continue to push forward. Getting into, I'll kind of break it into both parts. So, if we're talking about general forensics, forensics is very much a up and coming field, in that so many kids these days are going to college for it. They want to get into it, which is great. But there also aren't, it's not a hard job to get into, but it's not like working at an insurance agency where they employ hundreds and thousands of people, and that there's multiple different agencies you could work for. When we have law enforcement agencies, they'll have anywhere from maybe only 2 investigators to maybe like 15. So it can be a little difficult to get your foot in the door, but it's not impossible. So some people are like, they go into one interview and they don't get it, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to shift gears. Most of the time in forensics, if you're interviewing, you have to interview more than once. You have to get your name out there the first time, and then a lot of times it comes down to just timing. So if you are in that process, just don't be discouraged, and really just get your name and your face out there to the agency you want to work for. Like volunteer with them, do ride alongs, really make sure that they get to know you and your work ethic. When it comes to then, okay, now people who are in forensics and they're like, I want to be on their dive team, it's hard to kind of summarize it in like 30 seconds because of the fact I have tried to help so many and their agencies have just been like, no. So that's really where you just have to have the ability to keep pushing forward and be innovative with your thinking. I was very, very, very lucky that my agency saw the benefit of having me on the team and allowed for that. But to really just continue, just because you hear no once, don't let that stop you. Even if you're not in the water, there's tons that forensics can do to help their dive teams on land. And so it's really just that collaboration between both. So just keep trying. You got to be a little persuasive. And ultimately, if you are trying to be persuasive, it's always not how it's going to benefit you, it's how it's going to benefit whoever is up top. So if it's the sheriff, if it's the chief, if it's the county as a whole, if it's the state attorney's office, like you have to pitch it to, how is this not going to change just the life of the dive team? How is this going to change the life of our jurisdiction? You gotta pitch it to the whole.
Awesome. Absolutely great advice. Sarah, I want to thank you again very much for coming on to the podcast today. This has been absolutely wonderful and super insightful. It piques my curiosity into the type of work that you do, and you're doing amazing work, so thank you very much. Like you said, it's not work that everybody can do, so thank you for your service, essentially. And thank you once again. I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you having me. I love talking about it, and yeah, I'm trying to get more people into the field of forensic diving, so this is how we do it.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.